5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's time for The Tainted Glove, starring your favorite man of questionable character, Aloha Mr. Hand.
Hey, bud, let's party.
And the Holy Reverend K-Fids himself. It's go time, so grab a beer, grab a bite, and settle in. It's time for The Tainted Glove.
Aloha, and welcome to the Tainted Glove. I am your friend of questionable character, Aloha Mr. Hand. With me, as always, is my partner, the Honorable Reverend K-Fids, and today is Monday, March 14th, and we are hoping to someday make more money than the Bears have available in cap space come 2023. With that, K-Fids, take it away.
We might need to work really, really hard since the Bears have $140 million in cap. We could really make like $4. So,
yeah,
great. Welcome everybody. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We have a really, really, really awesome show for you guys. I tell you what, this probably is our all-time best episode. We have a really special guest. Aloha is going to go ahead and explain who our special guest is, but we do appreciate you guys joining us. There's been a lot going on. The free agent frenzy post collective bargaining agreement has turned into an absolute just zoo of moves around the league with only one thing with Cubs fans and Sox fans have in common. Right now, Cubs and Sox fans are very angry at their own problem. I guess we're all in the same together, but we got a lot to talk about there. We have our special guest, which I'll let, again, Pete introduce here in a second. And then after we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the Bears, making a few, NFL free agency kicks off today. And so a lot of moves going on. A lot of Bears have made a lot of moves over the last week and a half that have altered the whole landscape of Ryan Poles and the Bears roster management. So we've got a lot to talk about there. And then, of course, obviously, we'll probably get some, we might even talk about Mr. Trubisky and his favorite tweets that he's, his legendary tweet. Now he's in Pittsburgh. So we'll talk a little bit about the Trubisky taking over for Big Ben there as well, but all that and more. So, we got, again, a great show. We're going to start with the CBA and stuff, but our special guest, Aloha, why don't you tell everybody who our special guest is this week so they can stick around. We're just going to talk a little bit of baseball before we jump to that, but go ahead and fill them in on who they can expect here in a few minutes.
Yeah. So you'll notice we're not video streaming live. The reason for that is because we had a special guest, and based on his calendar, we had to record this a little bit earlier, so we didn't want to put it out there because it is towards the end of the workday for some of us. And, we don't want to get in trouble, so to speak. But we were fortunate enough to spend roughly about 50 minutes with Josh Rawitch. Now, the name may not sound familiar, may not ring a bell, but you would know him for his job title. That is the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So we did talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame, what's going on there. And I will say, we did talk about Hall of Fame voting and how it works and opinions about some of the, would you say, controversies around it. He was very forthcoming in that, very forthcoming in all his answers, and he was just an absolute great guy to listen to. I think the interview went much better than I thought it would, so can't wait for you to hear it. Like we said, that's coming up very shortly. But first, little CBA talk. The CBA has been signed. Baseball is back. Thank God baseball is back. Because it was getting insane out there with these ridiculous stories that people had to write with no baseball about how, let's trade Lurie Garcia for Juan Soto and crap like that. Okay, that needs to stop. Use your head, use common sense when writing stuff. Yes, I would like to trade, Ronaldo Lopez for Mike Trout. The chances of that happening, I'll give you two words: slim and none. But it's so it's so nice to have actual baseball back and actually some moves happening, both with the Chicago teams and baseball in general. But I will say the first annual Idiot of the Year award, the Tainted Glove Idiot of the Year award, first annual, has to go to Fernando Tatis Jr., who broke his wrist and is out for approximately 3 months. Now, that's not the idiot factor in this. The idiot factor is he apparently broke it while riding a motorcycle and falling off of a motorcycle. And when asked about when did he makes the comment that, which time? Okay? Need I say more?
Worst motorcycle driver ever, or rider ever.
Yes.
He's like, wait, which
Yes.
track? Jeez.
I read that quote and I was just dumbfounded. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, he's a kid, but that doesn't make it an excuse. In fact, he's a kid. Somebody take the keys, please. He's
Yes.
not going to be the greatest life. I mean, we saw with Ruggs here in Vegas. Young people with money don't make the greatest decisions when it comes to their safety.
Yes.
They got to go fast and heavy. They like to drive fast. They like to go fast. And I think, yeah, that also really alters the market too. And since the CBA, came down, there's been just tons of movement. I'm just going to kind of highlight a few of these real quick. This isn't actually in any specific order. I'm just going to kind of go to the bottom of the list. Steve, friend of both the White Sox and the Cubs, Steve Shishek, signed a 1-year deal with the Nats, with the Nationals. You've got the Rangers and the Twins kicked off with a big trade yesterday. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to the Twins for Josh Donaldson, right? Was it Josh?
No, Mitch Garver.
Oh, Mitch Garver. That's right. Retro. Mitch Garver for Falefa. That's right. And so that happened. So you got to trade there. The Twins are up to something. We'll talk about that in a second. Martin Perez signed with the Texas Rangers, left-handed reliever. Andrew Vasquez, left-handed pitcher, signed with the Blue Jays. Let's see here. Tim LaCastro, outfielder, major league contract with the Yankees. Andrelton Simmons, the Cubs got their shortstop. Not named Carlos Correa, the former Twins shortstop, but he is a former Gold Glove Award winner. He hit 223 last year. So not a great offensive, but very good defensive. And a lot of Cub fans thought that might be just a defensive replacement, but based on the Correa market and how it seems to be falling towards the Astros, that's the shortstop that the Cubs management and ownership allowed Jed Hoyer to spend on $4 million 1-year contract. Ottavino returns or moves to the Mets, across from the Yankees. So he just jumped across the subway, took the subway across, and Nick Whitgren, right-handed pitcher, joining the Cardinals. Carlos Rodon, friend of the White Sox, friends of White Sox fans, big like Carlos, threw a no-hitter over Cleveland in 2021. 2-year, $44 million contract to join the San Francisco Giants. Clayton Kershaw returns to the Dodgers again, 1 year, $17 million. 33-year-old three-time Cy Young Award winner.
Future Hall of Famer.
Yep. White Sox also got Joe Kelly, right-handed pitcher from the Dodgers, by the way. Love the guy. The guy that basically dosed Carlos Correa or whoever it was and gave him the face expression. Everyone loves that. He
got suspended for it too, didn't he?
Yep. But everyone loves that guy just for that reason. I think he was league-wide loved. Yuri's Familia, the Phillies, a 1-year, $6 from leaving the Mets to go to the Phillies. You've got Jordan Lyles going to Baltimore, returning to Baltimore, excuse me. The Oakland A's made a trade, I believe.
Yes, Matt Olson to the Braves for like 4 prospects.
Well, they also got right-handed Chris Bassett from Oakland.
Oh, yes.
For right-handed Adam Aller and right-handed pitcher JT Ginn, or I don't know how you say it. That's the guy that got hit, and Bassett's the guy that got hit in the face with a line drive last year against the Sox or the Cubs.
That is against the Sox.
Yep,
because I was at the game.
Twins got 2 guys. They traded away Sonny Gray. The Reds traded Sonny Gray to the Twins. Really good starter, plus a minor leaguer. They got Chase. The Reds got Chase Petty, a first-round pick. That was the Minnesota's first-round pick last year. So Sonny Gray bolstering up that Twins lineup. The Twins are doing something the last couple of days. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. And with my bad knee, I shouldn't be throwing anybody. Ed. So
I'm just thinking Trevor Story. I mean,
it has to be.
Yeah.
Yusei Kikuchi, 3-year deal with the Blue Jays, $36 million. And then Nelson Cruz, this was a big one for a lot of teams. Nelson Cruz, 41-year-old dude, still found a way to get a 1-year deal, $15 million, signing with the Nats. So he's in Washington now, what might be his last season. And then, of course, the big trade from the Twins, they traded Josh Donaldson in that trade.
And Kiner
Falefa and backup catcher Ben Rortvedt for Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela. So Donaldson out of the AL Central and onto the world's biggest stage with the Yankees. That should really go over well. Him and Cole might fight each other pretty much first week. Of Garrett Cole and him are not friends. At least they were doing the sticky substance thing, trolling each other. So that should be interesting. Sean Doolittle is coming back to close for the Nats. It looks like at least on a minor league deal. Brad Hand, Phillies, 1 year, $6 million. The Brave, we got that Braves trade where they got Olsen from the Athletics. They traded a bunch of great prospects, some top 70, 80 prospects, and the Braves get Matt Olson, which takes them out of the Freddie Freeman sweepstakes because Freddie Freeman is not signed yet. And then the big trade that just happened within the last hour and a half was that big Reds trade where they got Jesse Winker from the Reds. The Reds traded Jesse Winker, to the Mariners for all-star outfielder Jesse Winker. Mariners get Suarez, Eugenio Suarez, and Jesse Winker. They gave up Justin Dunn, Jake Fraley, an outfielder, left-handed pitcher Brandon Williamson, and a player to be named later. His name might be cash considerations. So,
Wally money's going.
And this is just basically Sunday and early first half of Monday. There's still a lot to come. A lot of free agents out there still. A lot of moves to be made. And so of all these moves for you, I mean, obviously the White Sox got another bullpen piece for an already strong bullpen, which that might indicate that Craig Kimbrell might be on the move somewhere.
Actually, they got two bullpen pieces because there's a Vince Velasquez signing too.
That's right. So for you, Pete, we'll talk about the Cubs here in a second because mine's far less complicated, I guess, for the Cubs. For you guys were looking for certain pieces. The White Sox are so close, and they're in the window, and they're a right fielder short, and they're maybe an arm in the bullpen, maybe a starter, especially if you really don't want to trust Dallas Keuchel. What are your thoughts on what they've done so far? And obviously, we've seen a lot of White Sox fans on Twitter very dissatisfied so far. I know a few people in our DMs were having a full-on meltdown this morning, having a mental crisis, I think, because nothing's happening and playing out in at least the speed in which they would like it. But those guys like Michael Conforto, they're still out there. But what are your thoughts? And tell me where you think it's headed.
I love the Joe Kelly signing. I absolutely love this signing because especially this year with the short ramp-up period of spring training and everything else, teams will heavily, heavily rely on their bullpens, especially the first month of the season, as they try to stretch pitchers out even further. Because I don't think they're going to have them fully stretched out to start the season with the shortened spring training. So I absolutely love the Joe Kelly move, not only for adding another pitcher to the pen, but the attitude he brings. Let's face it, when he stared down, when he did what he did against the Astros, what is one team that the Sox looked inferior against last year? It was Houston. I love this move for it. I love adding to the bullpen. I think the Josh Harrison move at second base is a good move. Obviously, at his advanced age, he's more of a stopgap Band-Aid type measure, but at least you got a quality player to insert there, and you're not relying on Lurie Garcia, because Lurie Garcia is at his best when he's the Swiss Army knife. At shortstop one day, at second another day, maybe out in left field one day. That's where he's the most useful. Having him play the same position every day is not the best use of Lurie Garcia. I think the moves they made, and bringing Vince Velasquez in too, I think with Vince Velasquez coming aboard, there's got to be a Kimbrell or Keuchel move imminent. That's just my opinion. And where he's going, where one of them is going, to who, I don't know. But I just think there's got to be a move imminent coming. And maybe it addresses the right field situation. Maybe it's, I don't see it being Oakland, because Oakland will want young talent in return if the Sox try and trade for Sean Manaea, which is another name that the Sox fans are up in arms about go get Sean Manaea, because I think he's a Valpo boy or something like that. So I give the team a lot of grief. I do, but I think what they've done so far, I am really impressed with. But again, they still haven't given out $100 million contract. You're in your window. Now's the time to go get that. While I would love to see Nick Castellanos in right field. I'd love to see Chris Bryant in right field, to be honest with you. But we know KB's agent is Satan, so that's probably not going to happen.
Oh, stop. You know what I think too with the White Sox thing? I think a lot of it also today, everyone just they dig into deep into like comments, like the comments today by Tony La Russa saying that was it Moncada might play some right field or something like that. What do you think that Tony La Russa is going to say if he doesn't have the player on his roster right now? He has to prepare as if he doesn't have someone. So if you don't have your option locked up yet, you have to. Someone's got to have to play there. And you don't sit there going, well, God, I hope we sign someone. What if the market doesn't falls through or something like that? You've got to have somebody. So I think people freaked out today because, again, Lewis is like, yeah, we're going to give this guy a shot out in the outfield, blah, blah, blah. That's not what they wanted to hear, but it's just what you have to say because you're not going to deal with, like, make believe. If they're not under contract, they don't exist in your world. You need to move on without them. And I think that some of that is also grandstanding to say that we're prepared to move on, even if this person we're negotiating with doesn't want to take the money that we're offering. But, oh, my God, the meltdown from some of those quotes. And it's not Tony La Russa's fault. He didn't build this roster. No. And he's going to make what he has with what he has. Now, I did see a really funny post. I just actually retweeted it. Someone posted, apparently in the movie version of the White Sox season, Colin Farrell will be wearing excessive makeup to play Tony La Russa. Thinking about the Penguins. We're still good at the Penguins. I thought it was pretty funny.
Well, and, the other thing people always lose sight of, it takes two to sign a contract. It's not only the White Sox offering a contract, but the player has to agree to it. And let's just face it, there's some players who don't want to play in the cold in April and May. That is a definite drawback. There are some players who just strictly want to go to the West Coast or the East Coast because they feel that their brands will have greater exposure on one of the coasts. So you have to understand it takes two to tango. Now, I will say the White Sox have really dropped the ball on several contract negotiations. There's no denying that. But at the same time, they've also made contract offers to people who were fair to go to a different team. Like Zach Wheeler with the Phillies. They offered him more money, but his fiance at the time, wife, wanted to stay on the East Coast. Mm. It's something you can't fight.
No.
And don't forget, taxes play a factor in this too. Because players will look at the taxes and 81 games of paying Illinois taxes versus 81 games of paying, for example, no taxes in Arizona or Texas. Mm-hmm. That's a big draw.
Huge. And Florida. Or California, too. California, I mean, you could basically, you can mark out, you're going to lose probably 60% of your salary just on taxes alone in California in the gas prices. Yep. So that's, and you have to take into consideration, like, can you fault their significant other for saying, look, I don't want to leave. Like, I like the East Coast. We don't know what goes on with their, maybe they have older family members that they want to stick near. And so, what works best for the player? I can tell you, guys like KB are also trying to stay close to home. He's got a baby, and now his wife is going to be having twins in the next 2 months. You want to be close to home as best as possible, and you're going to choose what's best for your family. No offense to you fans, but you can all pound sand. It's what's best for the player. The player is going to not do what's best for the fans. The player needs to do what's best for him and his family. And that's the number one thing. And so when you get these players, it might not happen overnight either. And some of these players are being very smart. I think that, guys that haven't signed yet are smart to let the market obviously flush out, but they're also smart to take their time to read through the CBA and understand all the finer points so that they're not getting snaked by. We obviously have seen the owners don't operate in good faith. We know this. So why would you rush into something where you could possibly be thrown into a situation where you're locked into some deal that actually has a bunch of bad verbiage in it that screws you over time? And so these guys got to take their time. They're pros. They're going to be ready to play when it's time to take the ball. When it's time to dig in the box, they're going to be ready. But it's really difficult. And with the White Sox fans, what the White Sox have to do, there aren't a ton of moves they need to make. They're already right there. Now they need to push themselves over. Obviously, like if you haven't been paying attention, Carlos Correa is pretty certain to head back to Houston now on what could be a 5 to 7 to maybe even 10-year deal with a 1-year opt-out, or it could just be. My prediction was that he was just going to sign a 1-year deal, but it sounds like it's probably smarter to sign like a 5 to 6-year deal with a first-year opt-out, so that he can opt out after this year. And what I think, obviously, if you've seen some of the stuff about Scott Boras, his take from the contract or whatever, he doesn't get paid.
Say it right, Satan.
He doesn't get up all of the money from that contract because he was already negotiating with his previous representation prior to the lockout. So there's a lot of red tape there. But if you took a 1-year deal with an opt-out, you can definitely clear, or a longer than 1-year deal, or just any kind of deal with a 1-year opt-out or just a 1-year deal. You can at least have the option on the table to take care of Boras too. And I don't think that's what Boras is. It's really not about money for Boras at this point. For him, he's made plenty. I think that a lot of it has to do with the prestige of showing that he can do everything right by his clients, because in the end, that's all that matters to Scott is his clients more than anything else. And so but it is funny though, because there's a lot of blame. He is the boogeyman. He was the boogie. It was his fault. It was his fault that certain players voted against the CBA.
All members of the executive committee, the players committee, 5 of the 8 were Boras clients. So there were people carrying on about how Boras is causing all this damage to the game. No, the players have their own fucking minds. They can think for themselves.
That's the whole part. These are grown ass men. They can let them stand on their own decisions. Scott Boras may be an advisor, but I mean, how many of you go out and make decisions and then when it doesn't succeed, you blame someone that advised you? No, you made the decision, smarty pants. Live with it. And in this case, these guys are grown men. 5 of the 8 or whatever happen to be Boras clients. They happen to have a lot more to lose because they have a lot bigger salaries. But stop blaming Boras. These are grown men. They make the decision. Scott Boras works for them. They don't work for Scott Boras. And I think that's such a weird. And I know that's like from decades of like water carrying from the media that have painted him as this. If you're with Scott Boras, basically his minion, and it's not. He works for you.
Yeah, and it all, with the White Sox at least, it all stems from the A-Rod negotiation back in the 2000-2001 offseason, because Kenny Williams wanted a one-on-one with A-Rod alone. And A-Rod and Boras said no. So Scott Boras became the boogeyman. And to be honest with you, it would annoy the hell out of me come free agency for years with the White Sox, where I would look at the free agent players and I'd have to look at the agent, because I knew, this guy's represented by Boras. Yeah, the Sox ain't going after him. And for those carrying water for ownership saying Scott Boras is doing all this damage, open your fucking eyes. It's an easy out for them for not doing their job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, easy to blame a boogeyman instead of you just thinking you had the best offer in for Machado and then walking out and getting overbid by the Padres. So while that's happening,
wait. Not only overbid by the Padres, but overbid to the number that was rumored that he wanted for 3 fucking months before that happened.
And with that said, flip side of that coin, on the other side of town, on the north side, while we're talking about contracts being paid out, the Cubs all offseason have been linked with Carlos Correa, front runners, yada yada yada, seat at the table. 10-year.
Very White Sox, by the way. They sound like the White Sox used to sound.
Absolutely. And you go to this thing and we're attached. We're at the table. He wants 10 years, $300 million as a starter. Cubs aren't willing to do 10 years. So the Cubs like, we'll give you 6 years or whatever the excuse is. And it ain't going to happen. Carlos Correa is going to head back. The Cubs were never going to do it. We've seen it time and time again. The Cubs have made no moves of significance. They got Stroman, and I think they signed one more. I think they've had one, two,
shortstop. They signed a shortstop.
Three. Right. That's what I'm saying. I think they've had 3 major league contracts signed this offseason. Everything else has been a minor league deal. I might be able to fact check. It might be 4. But the Cubs aren't making moves to be a contender. They're not tanking. They're doing what we've talked about on the show before, which is the old Reinsdorf thing. It's far more profitable to be a second place team spending less money than it is to be a first place team spending money and winning. You can generate just as much income and revenue when you're just doing just enough. It's like you're wearing just enough flair in Office Space, working at tchotchkes. You're doing just enough so that fans are in, but not enough to actually, in the end, you're not going to compete. And the Cubs, I think, are sitting at like 18th in the league in payroll, which is unacceptable for a team that has the highest, most expensive fan experience of any team in baseball. They should be in the top 5 every year, no matter what. And they're sitting at 18 right now. And they weren't willing to throw out a big number for Correa. And I don't care what Dom, director of morale, says, or Cubby Crib, or what any of these other Twitter accounts that are holding water for ownership. If they had the best offer to Carlos Correa would have taken the offer. It's common sense. So to say that, well, he just wanted to go back to Houston. No, the Cubs didn't offer him enough. The Cubs failed. Stop holding water for Jed. We have seen over year after year after year, and knowing obviously for me with the inside stuff that I know from KB, Jed is a water carrier for his boss. Yes, his boss asks him to lie, and he lies. He's lied about contracts in the past. He's lied about working hard. It's all about intelligent spending. They've been kicking the can down the road for a reason for the last 3 years. Remember, in 2018, it was we're not going to spend on a bullpen while the Cubs are contending because we're going to try and gear up and save up money for a run at Bryce Harper. Right. That never happened. Every year, it was a new excuse as to not spending. They talk about offering Javi a contract. They offered him one contract in 2020. The beginning before the season started. They never offered him another one again. They never offered KB a contract at all. They offered Rizzo what at the time would have been below market. And Jed goes out there and the Monday after everybody got traded and says that they think that their offers are going to stand up and they can rest their head on their pillow. They keep projecting. And so Cub fans are getting to this point now where a lot of Cub fans, and again, I've been rattling this saber for years now at this point. Finally, some Cub fans, I'd say Cub fans are starting to open their eyes to this is a con. This is a grift. They don't plan on it. They're not doing Marcus Stroman, the 3-year deal. You're going to not contend in one of those 3 years. What a waste of money. Why even lock him up to a 3-year deal if you're not going to contend right away? If you're not going to compete and you're not going to put the money into the team. So I know it's not over. It isn't.
Does Stroman have an opt-out?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And this is the weird part too, is I don't think the Cubs, they could, again, I just don't have the expectations. I think that Jed has lied enough that I don't take anything. When Kaplan is saying that this isn't going to happen, everybody's out. And so this is where the Cubs are at. White Sox are in this window, but the Cubs are at this, at first it wasn't, we're not going to blow anything up. And then they blew everything up. And then it's, we're not going to rebuild. And now they're rebuilding. And now we're like, fans are like, oh, we're going to be so good in 3 years. That's not supposed to be the case. That's not supposed to be the case when you were one of the most profitable baseball franchises in the game.
And costly and the highest ticket price.
Exactly. And you're 18th in payroll. That's not how it's supposed to be. So Cub fans have a different argument, to bitch around. And so Correa is probably not going to happen. I don't know what the Cubs are going to do now. Like, I honestly have so low expectations that anything right now at this point is going to make me happy, I guess. But the Cubs aren't going to contend. They'll be just enough. I mean, in a bad NL Central, sure. But here we have the Cardinals now possibly swooping in and grabbing Trevor Story. You've got other teams making moves around them. I mean, the Twins are doing what the Cubs should have done, to be honest, because the Twins are making moves and getting themselves to a place where this year they could contend. And, you want to at least have some sort of optimism towards contention. If not, what are we going into the season as? This isn't 2013, 2014 anymore. This is in 2012 for the Cubs fans. This isn't unacceptable for a team that's worth as much as it is and has that amount of money in their coffers. But, Ricketts is trying to buy Chelsea FC. So we know where that money is actually going to be earmarked for, unfortunately. And so it could play out. Who knows? Something weird could happen and they lock up someone like a Story or, looks like Rizzo's probably headed back to New York. I thought he was going to be the nostalgia pick. That would be like the bone that they throw to the Cubs fans so they can meatball it up a little bit. But I have no idea right now, what the Cubs, and again, Everyone keeps saying, well, it's really quiet on the Cubs front. Jed must be doing something. Let's stop giving Jed so much credit. Maybe he's not doing anything. Maybe if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, flies like a duck, holds water like a duck, it's a duck. And so fans are just trying to convince themselves. And I think finally Cub fans are starting to see it a little bit more because they're tired of the constant can kicking from this group. And if you're going into the season with Patrick Wisdom and what's his name?
David Bodie?
Yeah, well, Bodie's not even starting the season. He's starting the season on IL. Schwindel. If Frank Schwindel is your 3-hitter and your first baseman, that dude is a DH spot starter on a normal baseball team. No offense. Love the guy. Patrick Wisdom was completely figured out last year. So he is a question mark whether or not he's capped his peak. And I know you're not a super huge fan of Wisdom. I know you've mentioned it a billion times on here. So Cub fans, it's a whole different world. And honestly, I have no idea what's going to go on, but we do know that, I know that, whatever it is, the Cubs have so many. Today, Jed said our focus is on pitching and pitching depth. Cool. So you can lose 2-0 because your offense is not putting anything up. You literally, your big signing is a $4 million 1-year contract to a guy that hit 223 last year. I bet he can pick the baseball. I know he does. He's a great defensive player, but that doesn't put runs on the board. Nothing in this lineup strikes fear. That now they're willing to say that they're going to go with Nico and Magical and I love those guys. I really do. But that offense is not going to put up 3 runs a game the way it is currently sitting. And so there needs to be something. And if not, fans are going to finally, Jed, Theo's gone, buddy. It's time to do some work or not. And it's not looking good for the here and now, but we were told that we're not rebuilding. And Ricketts even sent a letter to the fans saying that this is not going to be a rebuild. We're going to contend this year. And now we're at we're going to be so good in 3 years when the prospects finally pan out. Guys, that's no guarantee. The prospects. So that's
prospects are suspects. Always remember that. And Cub fans, welcome to the Jerry Reinsdorf model of baseball. Because that's, as a Sox fan, the second place statement is so true. It's just you give them enough to tease them and keep them coming back for more. That's all you do. So welcome to the Jerry Reinsdorf model of baseball.
Welcome to hell. Yeah. Well, on a positive, our boy KB, with Seattle making that deal, it looks like it's probably going to be either the Rockies, the Phillies, possibly the Padres, maybe even the Braves.
South side of Chicago, baby. He's going to be wearing the pinstripes for the White Sox.
If you're going to ask my prediction as to where KB is going to end up, I've had Seattle as one of them. I've thrown out the Rockies a few times, but I didn't think they were serious. But it feels like the Rockies are really serious right now. So ownership has gotten involved in the negotiations. Chris would hit like 40 jacks in Denver. So there's a possibility. I think that right now, if you were a betting person, I would say bet Rockies. I would say 2 on that list is Phillies. White Sox got to give an offer for Chris to accept an offer, and I don't think they have an offer in. Here's me too, man. I mean, the Cubs can afford them. The Cubs would barely even. There wouldn't be anywhere near the salary cap, luxury tax, or the luxury tax. Excuse me. If they could sign KB and a couple other players and be ready to rock and contend right now if they wanted to. And you got to want to contend. You got to want to actually do it. And it doesn't seem like they have it. But KB, he's looking to get, I think I actually tweeted it out earlier this week. He was going to take a week after the CBA, flat out said, don't expect nothing for at least a week. So every time you saw a rumor like KB's got an agreement in place with the Mets, or shut up Mets fans. He hates the Mets.
Hey, he was seen having lunch or dinner with his BFF, Bryce Harper.
Yeah, that was one. Bryce Harper and KB were having dinner in Tampa Bay. I'm like, are you in Tampa Bay? He's like, I'm literally 2 blocks away from you, coach. Okay, so you're not in Tampa Bay then. All right, give me that. Will you do me a pin drop real quick so I can stalk you? No. So that's good for our boy. So he's gonna keep an eye on that one. Keep an eye on the again, these guys are being pretty smart. He's taking his time. He's reading his contract. He's getting his offers. He's not going to get bamboozled again. Like he got Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer did a number on his faith and trust with people in the front office. And I don't blame him one bit at all. So that's where that's kind of headed. But, and it could be a great season. But with that season on the horizon, let's talk about the past, because the game of baseball is more than just now. the beautiful part about the game of baseball is what has come before us. The games, from Abner Doubleday, coming up with the concept of the game of baseball all the way to the current 3 outcome modern baseball, sticky stuff, whatever. The game is a rich history, and our special guest, who we're welcoming on the show this week, is kind of right in the thick of it, if you will. Mm-hmm. So, Pete, why don't you introduce our guest, and we'll jump to that, and we'll let you guys enjoy what to me I think was a fantastic time and interview, sitting down and learning so much about the Baseball Hall of Fame, what it takes to run the Hall of Fame. For me, I, honestly, if I was the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame, I probably at one point would walk pantsless up and down the aisles and all the halls of that, just to say I totally ran nude in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But I'm also a 12-year-old child, so I would think that would be funny. But that's not me. But a great interview. So Pete, why don't you kind of again introduce Josh for us and explain where we're at, and then we'll jump to our interview.
So we're fortunate enough to have Josh Rawitch, the president of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. We did discuss a wide variety of topics with him, and we did discuss Hall of Fame voting too, because we know that's a subject that is on everyone's mind. Not so much now, but a couple months ago it was. And we do know that he gave some opinions about things. He did not give the canned answer, if you will. He was very forthright in his answer on it. And also, if you have any young kids who want to get into the career of baseball, some great advice at the end of his interview on doing that as well. So with that, we'll let the interview take it away from here. Today on the Tainted Glove, we have a man who is a graduate of Indiana University. He started as an intern with the Dodgers in 1995. During the time of Mike Piazza. He worked for Major League Baseball Advanced Media in 2001 and 2002. Went back to the Dodgers from 2003 to 2013 and got to see the rise of the great Clayton Kershaw. Then went to the Diamondbacks from 2013 to 2021. He was an adjunct professor at USC from 2010 to 2011. And one thing you should know is my co-host is a huge Notre Dame fan, so get ready for grief about that. He became an adjunct professor at Arizona State University from 2013 to 2020. And most recently, starting on September 9th, 2021, my birthday, he became the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame. We're honored to have with us Josh Rawitch. Josh, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm glad I could make your birthday an exciting one. I'm sure that was what you were thinking about on that day.
I was actually out there because I went for the Jeter induction, so I was out there celebrating at Toscano's that night. As a matter of fact,
great spot here on Main Street, as you know. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. What's your favorite, Toscano's or Nicoletta's?
Oh man, they're both really good, and you know what, Boca too. I mean, to have a town that's 2,000 people in the village and 3 great Italian restaurants plus 2 pizza places, like we're a little lacking in the Mexican food out here, but Italian we're doing quite well.
Yes, and I recommend anyone, if you get out to Cooperstown, make it a point to go to Toscano's and or Nicoletta's. If you can hit both, do one in one night, one the next night. The veal parm, outstanding.
Yeah, there you go. I love it.
So with that impressive resume, I guess the first question is, how'd you wind up in Cooperstown? I mean, you're a SoCal boy. So how did you wind up in wintry, cold Cooperstown?
Well, it's funny. Right before we started recording this, John Shestakovsky from our office came in and said, "Did you ever think you would think a 35-degree day was nice?" But he saw me tweet something about how the weather was cool. Like, honestly, 7 months ago, I would have been like, God, 50 is just awful. And now 50 is what we aspire to. But realistically, you grow up, you know about Cooperstown, you hear about the Hall of Fame. It's this incredible place. Excuse me. And you kind of, nobody ever thinks like, hey, maybe I'll work there someday. It's not really, when you're at a club, I think we tend to think more about other clubs. But when this opportunity opened up and Jeff Idelson, the former president, called and said, "Hey, I think you'd be an incredible candidate for this if you would ever be interested." I just remember coming home and saying to my wife, like, you're not going to believe the call I got today. Like, who gets considered for a job like that? And she said, how would you ever turn something like that down if you got it? It's such an incredible opportunity. And so ultimately, I guess that's how I ended up here, is that Jeff, among others, I guess, identified me as somebody who might be a good fit. And then as I went through the interview process and came and saw the town for myself from a living here perspective, not a visitor, I just fell in love with it, and it just felt right.
How's the adjustment been going? I mean, obviously, I'm sure the winters is a rude awakening in some respects, to get used to, especially if you're from Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, I did go to school in Indiana, so I had 4 years where winter, at least I had some idea. But you're right, nothing quite compares you for this past weekend, almost 8 to 10 inches. And the funny thing is the cold hasn't really bothered me as much as I thought it would. In some weird ways, it's kind of like where I came from in Arizona. People would say, how do you live in 115-degree heat? And it's like, well, I don't stand around outside when it's dead of August and July. Like, you go from your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned house, the air-conditioned office, and that's essentially what you do here. Obviously, the other way around with the heat, with your heat instead of your air conditioning. But I guess I think the part that I underestimated, that I just forgot about, is what cold does to your house, the things that, like, you have to think about, that we purchased a house and we didn't like the curtains that were on there, so we took them down, not realizing that they were helping keep some of the heat in. Probably not the smartest idea. But we're learning along the way. We're having a blast. We're totally engaged in the community here. Kids are into school here. My wife's involved in a number of nonprofits locally, and everybody's made friends. It's really, we've adjusted really, really well.
And so, with all that being said, what would you say is the biggest surprise you had? And then, like, the biggest, I don't want to say disappointment, but, what surprised you? What would you be like, well, if I had a chance, I'd change this?
So the biggest surprise has been the things that we do here with the staff that we have is pretty unbelievable. I mean, we're not a huge operation. It's maybe about 80, 85 full-time people for this incredible baseball mecca. And when you take something like induction weekend, and you've got literally, like, the librarian is running transportation, and the woman who works in the mailroom is doing hospitality. And it's not just like, they're not just getting by, they're doing it incredibly well. It's just, to me, the biggest surprise is there's no events department, and yet we put on 2 enormous events a year, plus a bunch of other events. So I'd say that's been the biggest surprise, and it's just been awesome getting to know the people here, and everybody just kind of knows their roles, and things just kind of happen. That's pretty cool. Biggest drawback, I won't say for myself, but I will say that my wife has the lack of a Whole Foods or Trader Joe's within an hour.
You mean the price chopper isn't doing it for you?
Price Chopper's fantastic, but when you used to live around the corner from, every place that most big cities have, I think that's been the biggest. It's you get used to creature comforts, and there's amazing mom and pop shops here. There's so many really cool things about living in a small town, but obviously we're a good hour from we're half an hour from Oneonta and an hour from Albany and Utica, and that comes with some challenges that I would say, in a perfect world, would someone put a Whole Foods maybe 10 minutes outside of town? That'd be great, but I can't say it's impacting me nearly as much as probably my wife.
You gotta go for a nice hour drive just to get those sea salt, dark chocolate covered almonds from Trader Joe's. I know that.
Yep. It's the ice cream sandwiches. The ice cream sandwiches at Trader Joe's, man.
I got a quick question too. Now, obviously, you talked about the pros and cons, and with the Baseball Hall of Fame being such a baseball mecca, and you being obviously in the role that you're in, I just have this mental picture again. I'm such a dork, and I have this mental picture of the access that you get to have in those hallowed halls with such fantastic baseball memorabilia. And a while back, a couple years ago, I actually dated a girl who was a curator, at the San Diego Museum of Natural History. And we had an opportunity to kind of be in the museum after hours when nobody else was there. And it was completely different. It feels like a different place because you can almost feel like the mummies are talking to you. The artifacts are talking to you. And so for you, having the opportunity to kind of just walk through those halls sometimes, do you ever just kind of just stroll through there on your own when there's nobody around, and just look around and just say, you're just basically enveloped in all of this baseball history, all this just fantastic, beautiful part about the game itself.
I mean, I honestly do it almost every day. I actually, when I got here, I made myself a calendar reminder on my Outlook to make sure that I go into the museum at some point every day and just take something in, a case I haven't looked at, read a plaque of somebody I don't know, go down to collections or up into the curatorial department and go learn something. I mean, and so quite often, certainly this time of year when it's winter and it's quieter season, there's a lot of times where I'll be the only one walking through the plaque gallery at 8:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock at night. Right now it's 5:40 and the place is emptying out. So, I mean, when I walk out of here, I'm gonna be the only person in the Hall of Fame outside of the security guards. And that's, you absolutely, what you described, you feel it. You when you walk over to Tom Seaver's plaque, I can hear his voice talking about it. When I see Juan Marichal's plaque, I can hear him from the film that we show people when they come here with him talking about, like, I come from the small town in the Dominican Republic, and if you've seen that place, you wonder, how can someone from there end up in Cooperstown? And like, I look at the plaque and I can hear his voice, and it happens every single time I look at it, at some artifact or some cool thing. It is truly baseball heaven, and I'm incredibly lucky to call this my office every day.
Hopefully Ty Cobb keeps his mouth shut.
When he doesn't, I just smack him around a little
There
bit.
you go. Just make sure he goes in spikes down, not spikes up.
There you go.
But is there in your jobs with the Diamondbacks and with the Dodgers, I'm sure you've met a lot of the Hall of Famers. Is there a Hall of Famer that you've met since you took this job that you were like, wow, I finally got to meet, Willie Mays, just to throw out a name, or Hank Aaron, or whoever it may be?
I'd say the two names, and I don't know that they're the exact. I mean, it's so crazy. Every time one of these guys calls me and I look at my phone and it's like, oh, that's crazy. I can't believe that so-and-so is calling me today. But I'd say the two that probably have resonated the most with me are guys that I grew up watching. So Cal Ripken Jr. obviously is this incredible icon of our sport. And he was actually part of the interview process. So interviewing with him, he's on our board of directors. And so having an interview with Cal Ripken Jr. where he's asking really interesting and challenging questions, I just remember thinking, like, this is bananas, that the 8-year-old me is like, is this seriously happening? And then another guy who I've had a chance to have a couple meals with him and his wife, Ryan Sandberg. I grew up a second baseman, so while I always loved the Dodgers and I love Steve Sax as my favorite player growing up, Ryan Sandberg was always a favorite of mine. And so I've had a chance to spend a couple of meals just hanging out with him. And both those guys are just normal people. All these Hall of Famers are normal people. But when you remember what they did and how much they meant to their cities and to the game, I'd say those are two of the guys that have just kind of, you leave there and you go, man, that was kind of cool that I just did that.
Right. That cracks me up too. That the West Coast guy, Steve Sax being your dude, and Ryan Sandberg kind of being the other second baseman at the time. No kidding. We moved back out to Las Vegas when I was a kid, and I had the Sandberg poster up, obviously, the Speak Softly, Carry a Big Stick, because he was my favorite player growing up.
Oh, nice.
I also had a serious Steve Sax aversion because he was obviously one of the rival National League. So I actually got a poster of him and I drew mustaches and all. So that hung next to the Sandberg poster on my bedroom wall, but it like patches and scars and stitches and I drew all over his face. So
I'll tell you what, I wish those I mean, I had Tony Gwynn on my walls. I had Oral Hershiser, a bunch of these guys, but which is kind of funny now to think that I had a rival player, Wade Boggs, was on my wall. It's so weird that I put these guys, but we all remember those posters from like the 80s and early 90s. And my son now, it's like, hey, do you want to put anything in your wall? I was like, no, I'm good. Like, come on. He loves baseball. He loves these guys. I'm like, you don't want to put a poster on your wall of whoever.
Get the Mike Trout fathead up there. Let's go.
Yeah, times change. I got to remember that.
Yeah. And full disclosure, I had the Johnny Bench poster up on my wall because being a long-suffering White Sox fan, they weren't really good for most of my youth. 83 was great, but you always saw the Reds, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Red Sox on the NBC Game of the Week, and I just became a huge Johnny Bench fan.
That's awesome. And by the way, I just realized that the baseball I'm holding, I always have for whatever weird reason, I'm always flipping a baseball in my hand. And I just realized it's from when the Diamondbacks played in Wrigley Field in 2014. It was the 100-year anniversary of Wrigley.
Oh, yeah.
So one of these little.
Oh, yeah. The special base. Yeah.
So,
just something to get around with,
Yeah, just,
Snapping it.
Yeah. So, fortunately, the lockout has been resolved. So, part of the question I was going to ask next, I don't need to ask, but how are you going to try and get people back to the hall in 2022 after the last couple of years with everything that's gone on in the world?
It's a very fair question, and I think I'd say there's a couple things that I think help us a little bit. One, the last time there was a strike, we didn't have the baseball tournaments in town that bring about probably a third of our visitors that come into town, and they've been booked. Interestingly, my son is we were supposed to be coming to Cooperstown in 2022 with my son's team, so they're all coming here in June. He's still going to play with them, his old team in Arizona, which is kind of fun, but I mean, they've been planning that trip for years, and that was not going to get changed regardless of the labor situation. So I do think to some extent we have the benefit of tourism happening regardless. I think the world is bouncing back. There's no question. We just opened up our bookstore downstairs for the first time in 2 years since COVID. I mean, the world is starting to come back. The masks are coming off. I managed to get COVID last week in the middle of all this. So I'm not pretending like it's over, but I feel like people are planning trips again, and people want to, certainly people who love the hall that come regularly want to get back here, and people who have long had this on their bucket list. I keep saying, like, get it off your bucket list, put it on your to-do list, and come check this place out. And I think people are starting to feel comfortable on flights and make these. I mean, we're seeing the numbers for sure where we thought they'd be. I don't think we're going to be back to where we were in 2019, but I think we could be we can get about halfway probably from where we were last year to where we want to be. And I think if over the next year and a half, I think we'll get back to pretty close to normal very soon.
That's great, because I will actually be out there Memorial Day weekend for the
awesome
Hall of Fame Classic. And I am participating in the golf outing on Sunday.
Oh, perfect. That's awesome.
So,
I will
yes.
look forward to playing with you out there.
Yeah, and I will tell anybody, the Hall of Fame Classic weekend is a phenomenal weekend, because you have at Doubleday Field, you have a game played on Saturday with ex-major leaguers, with Hall of Famers as the managers of these teams. I think it's more they just stand there and talk while the players do their thing. But it's a great time. And then they have the night at the Hall where you can go around and meet all the ex-players as well as the Hall of Famers. They try and position them at objects that relate to the team they're representing. So the White Sox player is usually by the giant pinwheel from the scoreboard in the display. So it's really a great time. You can take your picture with all of them. I strongly suggest it. And I know you have induction coming up too in July, which should be hopefully a lot of people will go back, because it was great to be there for the Jeter induction. I shouldn't say for Jeter, Walker. I shouldn't call it, but that's what it is. It's the Jeter induction. I understand why it was on a Wednesday. I get it because of what happened, but hopefully you can get more people there. And especially with David Ortiz being from Boston, I would imagine you get a lot of Boston traffic coming in on Sunday and leaving on Sunday after the induction ceremony as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got between Boston, I know there's actually quite a huge group from Minnesota, between Tony Oliva, Jim Cott, that we're hearing quite a bit from. Kansas City is going to be showing up in droves from Buck O'Neill. Chicago, Minnie Minoso fan. I mean, we think it will be a lot closer to what a normal induction weekend is like, including all the ancillary events that we weren't able to do last year. There's all sorts of things that happen that we couldn't do. And same thing goes, as you mentioned, I've actually never seen the Classic weekend. I'm really excited to see that. But that's, just being a part of the planning process for it, it's pretty exciting. I mean, yes. We're going to announce rosters relatively soon, but I'll tell you, I'll break this news on here that we're looking at, I think of the 30 teams. I think at this point we've already got more than a dozen All-Stars, former All-Stars. So, I mean, it's going to be some names that people really know and love and are going to want to come out and see. And it's just such a cool time to spend a long weekend here in Cooperstown and check out everything we have to offer.
And I will also say to those people as well that there were Hall of Famers who did play in that game before they became Hall of Famers during that 5-year waiting period. Jim Tomei was one. I know he played in a couple of them. I'm trying to think of who else was it. Pedro, it was another one.
That's cool.
Who
Well, we may
pitched
have some of those. Some guys may fall into that category this year. So if you're trying to figure out when you want to come out, and the cool thing too, I mean, you know this because you've been here, but I mean, there's never a bad weekend to come here. I mean, there's just so much. The weather basically from Memorial Day to Labor Day is pretty stellar, and it's just, I mean, it's baseball heaven. It's such a special place.
And I saw your tweet the other day where you were down in the archives with the Babe Ruth Brooklyn Dodgers hat. I've been fortunate to be down there and get a limited view of things. What is it like to have access to that? I mean, with the Hall of Fame, what is it? 90% of the artifacts aren't on display. And I just can't imagine going down there and seeing like Ty Cobb spikes as an example, or you know, a Babe Ruth bat.
It's pretty mind blowing. I mean, honestly, there is so much incredible stuff in our collection, and it's all donated. These guys have all, you know, we never buy any of it, and most people, again, you guys understand how we operate for obvious reasons. But I mean, we're a nonprofit, so it's not like we're going out and buying these things, and we're not funded by MLB. We're a nonprofit that players want to give their stuff to us because they know we're going to look after it forever. So I mean. It's interesting. Steve Sachs being a good example. He was here for the Classic, I think about 5 years ago or so. He decided to donate. He gave his spikes that he wore, I want to say from the 88 World Series with the Dodgers. I can't remember when they were from, but he gave a pair of spikes. I didn't know that. And another time I was here, I was going down one of the aisles and I saw it said spikes, and I opened up the case and there's Steve Sachs, my favorite player. Spikes are just sitting in. So I mean it is. I try not to take advantage of it. Obviously, that's not why I'm here, is to just go snooping around and look at things. But from time to time, when we do take people down there, in this instance, I had a close friend here this past weekend, and I just wanted to give him a kind of a quick glimpse. And we were literally walking by a box that said Brooklyn Dodgers, and it said Babe Ruth. And he's like, Babe Ruth was on the Dodgers? I said, well, he didn't play there. He was a coach. He goes, so what is that? I go, I don't know. I guess we should look. So we opened it up, and it was a box of hats and several other hats. And again, it's all incredibly, we're wearing gloves. We're making sure that we're not you never put your hand in the actual glove because you don't want to ruin the leather. Like there's so many things that I'm learning. Even after that, I had one of our curators come to me afterward and explain to me kind of how things work down there in collections. That I mean, this is not, honestly, was not my world prior to coming here. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert when it comes to museums and artifacts and libraries. I mean, that's the part that I'm learning every day. And obviously the business side of baseball is where my background really was, and why I think I'm here.
And, you know, one of the things about the artifacts, if they get a jersey that has dirt on it, they preserve it with the dirt on it. They don't wash it per se. Right. They clean it, but they preserve it with the dirt. I know, like in some of the spikes, there's dirt in this, you know, in the cleat itself. So they try and preserve it as they received it.
Always. We say our mission is preserving history. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if you're taking a moment where Ricky Anderson stole a base and there's dirt all over his jersey or all over the base and you take it off, well, then you're not preserving history. You're altering history. Right. And so we try to preserve history and honor excellence and connect generations.
Now, would you say when you took this job too, would you have considered yourself a baseball history buff per se? Or is this something that in taking the job now you've taken it upon yourself to become that kind of expert, because obviously it kind of, you're obviously at the Baseball Hall of Fame, or were you already kind of in that zone as a historian of the game where you were very adamant about the history itself?
I'd say a little bit of both. I certainly do not consider myself a history buff in the fact, I mean, like I can't say that I dove deep into Negro Leagues history or but I will say that I've always been a lover of the history of the game and a student of it. It's hard. I don't want to misrepresent the level of knowledge of history that I had, but it certainly wasn't like I was starting from scratch. I mean, I've loved this game since I can literally remember walking. And so probably a lot of my history is really more second half of the 20th century and the last 50 to 70 years of baseball, as opposed to the first 100 years. I've learned a ton about the origins of the game and equipment and early, 1910s, 20s, 30s, and all that sort of that stuff. Negro Leagues history and black baseball history is all stuff that I'm learning a ton about. But I mean, I've always loved it, and I certainly, that's the best part is that you never get to the end of it. I could do this job for the next 50 years, and I'm never going to be able to read every word on every label and remember every exhibit. I mean, there is so much to study and so much to learn that's why the people that come here, you can't get it done in 3 hours. You have to spend a weekend and then another weekend and then another weekend, like taking this stuff in. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. And it's funny, the times I've gone, I've always made it a point to go watch that Greatness of the Game or Generations of the Game documentary in the movie theater. And anyone listening to this, when you get there, go watch it. It's incredible.
It will make you cry.
Yes,
it has made me cry numerous times already. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's even tougher to watch now because earlier you mentioned Juan Marichal. That's where that comes from when he's talking about the kids playing baseball with milk cartons as gloves in the video. And it's hard, it's sort of hard to watch now because you have Hank Aaron in it. You have Joe Morgan in it. Several of the players who recently left us. Yeah. So it's great that you caught some of their memories on it, but at the same time, it's hard to watch because you're like, he's no longer with us.
Yeah, but I do think in a weird way, you're right. That does make it harder, I think. And unfortunately, several of them I never got to know because we lost 10 Hall of Famers in a basically year-long span right before I got here.
Right.
But one of the cool things is that I think their memory is being preserved by this film. And people who, my son is showing up here watching this thing, and he's learning about Joe Morgan and Tom Seaver and Bob Gibson and people that maybe he knows from MLB The Show because that's how he tends to know his MLB. He's learned all of it. It's amazing how much he knows by playing MLB The Show. He has baseball history.
That's a good point.
But I think that's one of the cool things is that film and this place will keep that legacy alive for all of those guys long after they're gone.
It's such a rad experience. It's got to be for your son too. Just my dad's, at the Hall of Fame. I thought it was cool because I had access to our church gym because my dad was a pastor. Having access to, that is just insanely such a cool experience for him. I'm sure.
Yeah, they didn't. He didn't actually believe me when I told him that this was the job. He actually thought I was kidding. And probably 10 minutes into it's a big deal. You're sitting down your family and telling everybody that they're moving. And my daughter, who's not a huge baseball fan, she's not a big sports fan in general. So for her, there wasn't the cool factor of, oh, great, now I can go to the Hall of Fame anytime I want.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, we're leaving all of my friends in Arizona. So as we're explaining all this to them, probably 10 minutes in, my son is like, wait, you aren't kidding. I was like, no, we've been talking about this for 10 minutes. He thought I was kidding. He's like, I can't believe you're so. And honestly, my daughter even said, she said, look, I incredibly mature for her age. Was 13 at the time, 14 now. And she said, look, I don't want to leave my friends in Arizona, but I don't blame you. This is, how could you turn this down? And what 13-year-old could say it? Usually
right.
they're thinking about themselves. And she knew immediately what an incredible opportunity this is. And for our family, it's just an adventure of a lifetime to be living in this town and to try a whole new way of life and deal with snow and winter and small town life and all that will be something that they'll remember forever.
No, that's great. With induction coming up in July, I got to ask you about the 500-pound gorilla in the room, and that is the Hall of Fame voting. And I know the sports writers have asked for guidance on how to handle certain players and also asked for how to handle the 10-player maximum on the ballot. Right now, my understanding is that the BBWAA, Baseball Writers Association of America, is the one who has the bylaws for how to vote for the Hall of Fame. So it's really not a Hall of Fame-driven rule set, correct?
We certainly, I mean, it is in fact, the rules are set by us and by the board,
Okay.
Carried out by the BBWAA. But I mean, I know where you're getting at, and I will say that a couple of things I guess I can say on that front. One, there are definitely some media members, some BBWA members who have said that they're looking for better guidance, but frankly, I wouldn't say it's overwhelming. I actually think a lot of them, to me, the biggest misperception is that these guys ladies and gentlemen, don't take crazy time to look. I mean, they pore over this and they think about it very deeply, and they all make very personal choices. And we just feel like if we're going to start telling people what character should mean to them, then what do we need a voting base for? I mean, ultimately, if we could just decide who goes in, if we wanted to decide what character means. The so-called character clause has been there since the 1940s, shortly after we opened, and has always been a part of the process, and it's never been explained. And I would say, by and large, it's been gotten right for decades, for almost 8 decades. It's been right, and so maybe sometimes there's somebody who doesn't get in who should, or somebody who gets in, and some people don't think they belong there. But by and large, it's been handled well. And over the years, when things haven't gone probably in a fair way, we change that. We try to change with the times, and whether that's the era committees that have had some changes over time, or it used to be we waited 15. You used to have 15 years on the ballot. Right. Now it's 10. I mean, none of this stuff is done without significant thought that goes into it, and everybody's going to agree that's part of the hardest. The hardest thing is to get 75% of the world to agree on anything. So in the cases of maybe Bonds or Clemens, you got 66% of the people agreeing that they believe that they belong in. Well, we've always had a standard of 75%, and that is a very high standard. It is the top 1% of those who ever played the game, and then ultimately taking into account the character and other things of that nature.
Yeah, and again, the 1% is really key because last I heard, there's like over 30,000 MLB. There were 30,000 people who have played a game plus in MLB history. Yeah. And you have, was it like 260 players and then like 30, 40 executives and 10 umpires. I forget the exact number breakdown, but it's something like
close.
that.
Yeah, you just came pretty close to it, yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about the 1% of the 1% here. It's not like, some random guy. It's not like, and not to pick on the NFL, where you have 6 people that go in every year.
Yeah.
It's
what's interesting. We were just talking about this with John Chestakovsky, our VP of Communications and Education here. He said, I don't know why it's not a bigger deal when the ballot comes out. The ballot, if you make it onto the ballot, you are one of the top 2 or 3% of people to ever play Major League Baseball out of this 27,000 people. That's incredible. That should be considered a big deal that you made it onto the ballot, and then to make it past and make it to that 1% that gets elected. Again, part of what makes this such a special place is people have strong opinions on both. People care so deeply about this, and frankly, that's what I love about it. I wouldn't want to work at a place where nobody cares who gets in or everybody gets in. Like I kind of like that this is something that people talk about for months on end, and even in the middle of May, you're going to see articles that talk about a potential Hall of Famer, or someone's going to get into a debate about who belongs. That's really cool. That's what makes this place so special.
And the fact that it's a club too. And so a club by definition is exclusive. And that's being a part of that fraternity isn't just, I had a couple good years and I was really popular in the media. It's something that has to be considered over the long haul. And so I think fans sometimes get that recency bias as well in their head. And they think that, that makes it also, that always muddies the water when they're judging who gets in or who was voted in too as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, and again, those players take great pride in being in that club because I've had the good fortune of meeting several of them, and they wear it like a badge of honor that, we're the top 1% of the 1%, so to speak, and it's a great thing. And, I love the day the ballot comes out. My partner can tell you that because I will immediately look at the ballot and say, here's who I think should be in. And why is this guy on the ballot? And isn't the rule they have to play for at least 7 years in 10 MLB, 10 years, to be considered on the ballot?
And then have to be, and then 5 years post-retirement. Yep.
Right. Right. And then they have to maintain 5% to stay on the ballot from 1 year to the next, 10-year maximum.
Yep.
Yep. And, it's to me, the ballot's a great debate piece because there is a certain sense of personal bias that goes into it, too. For example, someone I know is a huge Alan Trammell fan and was ecstatic when Alan Trammell got in a couple years ago on the Veterans Committee. I think Alan Trammell was a great player, but I don't know if he's Hall of Fame worthy. And that's not a slight against him, but that's just how I am. And I'm sure there are players everyone goes, how did that guy get in? There's players like Ricky Henderson where you go, yeah, that's a no-brainer. That, like Kershaw's a no-brainer in my opinion. Ichiro is a no-brainer in my opinion. Pujols, another one that's a no-brainer in my opinion. So, and then you get the one dissenting vote that'll say, I don't think he's that. I'm like, okay, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And I just
first ballot. They're not
a first ballot argument.
But next year, without doing anything different, now they're a Hall of Famer. It's the prestigious aspect of that, the optics there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is honestly the conversation around it, as you're saying, when the ballot comes out and who belongs, who doesn't, that's part of that's part of the charm of what makes this place so special. And then you have people like Tony Oliva or Gil Hodges waited decades to get in, and who it means the world. I mean, I watched Ted Simmons last year. And Ted Simmons, you look at maybe back in the day, people didn't really fully appreciate some of what he was doing as a catcher. And then you start to look at some of the advanced metrics, and people put on campaigns, whether it's for him or Tim Raines or Larry Walker, that help people understand statistically some of what's happened. Again, everybody's going to have strong opinions, and that's good. The world is not supposed to be all thinking exactly alike. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a whole lot of fun.
And that was Ron Santo. That was Ron Santo for me.
Yeah. I remember the Nellie Fox campaign back in the 90s. That was a huge thing for White Sox fan, was the Nellie Fox campaign to get him in through the Veterans Committee. But moving on, since we're done with that. So growing up, what's your favorite team, and is it still your favorite team?
So I grew up a Dodger fan, and I had that incredible opportunity to live out my dream, work for them for 15 years. I mean, who gets their dream job at 18 years old? I was an intern, and I was not paid, and yet I could not wait to get into the office every day. It was unbelievable. What's interesting is that when you work for a team, you're obviously so heavily invested in it. I mean, I could not have been more invested in it from 1995 to 2011. And then when I went to the Diamondbacks, when your livelihood depends on we were in the same division. So I really kind of lost my Dodger fandom and became a D-backs fan for a decade. And I never would have thought that could happen. I would have thought that would take a while. And my old boss at the Diamondbacks, Derek Hall, who was at the Dodgers and then came over to the D-backs as president, he's the one that brought me. He said, you'll be surprised how quickly you become a D. I was like, okay, let's see. And he was right. I mean, I really became a huge Diamondbacks fan for the last decade. And so now I'm in this kind of weird in-between. I mean, I'll still always root for the D-backs because I'm not working at another team right now. I don't root against the Dodgers. I used to openly root against the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. I probably don't root against them anymore. But I think now I'm becoming a fan of kind of all the teams. I'm becoming a fan of the best players. I'm becoming a fan of the future Hall of Famers. I'm tracking guys that maybe in the past I wasn't paying attention to because it didn't matter to me. I was a West Coaster, and now I got to pay attention to somebody like, I don't know.
Randy Arozarena in Tampa, I think.
Exactly. There you go.
Yes.
So, I mean, I really, I'm just a huge fan of the game, and I could sit and watch any game anytime. I love it like none other, and I'm excited. I mean, my wife asked me at breakfast this morning, like, so what team are you and Braden going to root for? And I'm like, I don't even know, like, who Braden. Is he going to become a Yankee fan or a Met fan or Toronto fan? Like, we're kind of equidistant from all these places: Red Sox, Boston, you name it.
Yeah, what would you say favorite team wise? But now exhibit wise, what is your favorite exhibit at the Hall of Fame? What would you say is yours?
Man, that's tough. Because there's something that I love about each of them. I mean, I certainly growing up loving baseball cards. The baseball card exhibit that opened about 4 or 5 years ago.
Shoebox Memories.
Shoebox Treasures. It was actually funded significantly by my old boss at the Diamondbacks, Ken Kendrick.
I did a little funding on that too.
Did you? That's awesome. Oh,
Yes.
that's very cool.
My
I
name
love
is
to hear
on my name is on that plaque that's right by it.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So
Yeah.
I just looked at it yesterday when I was showing some around. But I absolutely love that exhibit. The Hank Aaron Chasing the Dream. I love the interactivity of the one for the record books. I mean, that's where you can go in and literally. My buddy yesterday was like, so like you could just look up any. I'm like, name something. He's like, stolen bases. I'm like, boom, boom. It's a touch screen. Okay, I can hit this. Okay, you want all time? You want active? You want from what were the active leaders as of 1973? It's all just. It's also interactive, and I think that's. I love that element of it. But I was really, I mean. Each of the exhibits that we have, I love the Viva Baseball. You guys, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm bilingual. I have a huge passion for international travel. I love going all throughout Latin America. Like to me, I could spend hours and hours in the Viva Baseball exhibit learning about the history of baseball all throughout Latin America. And there's not a bad one in the place. It's really pretty cool.
And the Shoebox Treasures one is outstanding because one of the features it has there is some of the Holy Grail cards, the 52 Mantle card, the
Honus
Wagner card. Yes,
yeah.
There's a rare Ted Williams card that's there, and it's just fascinating to see that you have all of those available for viewing. Because I'll stop every time I'm there. I'll stop and look at that 52 Mantle and go, boy, I'd really like to have that at my house.
Yeah, well, once again, it's funny. I was at lunch with Ken Kendrick not that long ago in Arizona, and his collection, he's got a book coming out later this year that's basically the top 50 cards of all time. He has like
nice
47 of them. And it's unbelievable, his collection of cards, including a 52. Man, he's got all and even collecting at that level, when you're talking about tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, for him, it's still about flipping it over, looking on the back, thinking about what that card, the memories it brought back when I was a kid. And what's really neat is that, I mean, that exhibit too, when my son came here for the first time, one of the first things he did was like, go make your own baseball card and the interactive piece of that. And like, I just think that that's part of what we have to do is keep making this place relevant for the next generation of fans. They're going to come in and they're going to look at things differently than I do or you do, but they still love the game the same way. And that's it's really what we're being held to by the public is like, how can we make this place and how do we get this to be attainable to people all around the country and are all the online things that we can do. There's no shortage of opportunities up and down these hallways. And it's pretty cool to be sitting in this chair thinking about it.
Yeah. And as a childhood Dodger fan, have you gone and searched out the Gibson bat?
I have not, but I do. I did find the right after I got this job, Fred Clare, who was the former GM of the Dodgers, emailed and said, "Hey, keep an eye out for the ball." He apparently was given the final out from '88, which was my child. I was 12 years old, kind of seminal moment of my childhood was Dodgers winning it all. And so I did quickly seek that out. I found that baseball in the display case, and I sent the picture to Fred, who was incredible. When I was an 18-year-old intern, he was GM of the Dodgers. I was so scared to go talk to him. I'm like, oh, my God, that's Fred Clare. He gave me half an hour of his time one day just picking his brain, and I've always tried to pay it forward because he was so kind to me. And so many people in this game, they just give their time and their energy to the next generation of people that come behind them, and that's a really neat thing about this sport as well.
And I think, I'm going off memory here, I think that ball was a strikeout from Oral Hershiser to Tony Phillips.
Very good. That is impressive. That is exactly what it was.
Because I just remember Hershiser dropping to his knee, like for a little prayer, and then and then the chaos started.
Yep. I cannot tell you what the last out of the 05 World Series was. I'm sorry, but. I could tell you for the Cubs. I could tell you it was a ground ball to Chris Bryant thrown over to Rizzo. I could tell you that. So.
Yeah. Juan Uribe to Paul Konerko at first base.
There you go. They were both. There you go.
Yeah.
Infield grounders.
So, and would the '88 World Series be your favorite baseball moment as a child? Just that, or would it be something else?
Yeah, I mean, certainly as a child, that was it. I mean, Gibson's home run in that series, probably even more than the last out. You just can't. I mean, whoever thinks that's going to happen. But I can remember like actually making confetti and throwing it around the house when they won it all. That I'd have to say as a childhood fan, that was probably my biggest
the question I've always had about the Gibson home run, you see that one car pulling out, stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, who's that poor person going, damn it, we missed it.
That's why you don't leave games early.
Right,
Not a World
exactly.
Series game, but yeah.
And then in your career, what's your favorite memory, whether it's with the Dodgers or with the D-backs?
I'd probably say I have one memory that tends to stand out a lot. Favorite might be too strong. I don't know. Anyway, I when we advanced in the playoffs for the first, so when I was there for not this last 10 years of Dodger history since I left was probably the best decade that the organization's ever had in terms of success.
Right.
But when I was there from 95 to 11, there really wasn't a whole they hadn't even made the playoffs from 96 to 04. They finally won a game in 04, but it wasn't until 08 when we advanced to the LCS.
You beat the Cubs to advance
exactly,
to the
yeah.
Man, I remember Manny Ramirez hit a home run. I don't think that's landed yet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Everything. Oh, watch that. Yeah.
The D-backs swept the Cubs in 07 too.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
It was terrible.
Yes, you're right.
I watched them play called Big Dogs right by as soon as baseball practice was over at Bonanza, we rolled over to Big Dogs, and I had to every single day. I had to watch that sweep 2 years in a row.
That's really funny.
Mocked by my fellow coaches.
Well, sorry about that, but I guess for me it was really about celebrating with my colleagues, and I remember going to a bar in downtown LA with probably 100 people from the staff. And when you're in the PR side of things, you're fortunate you're in the clubhouse and you're getting drenched in champagne, all that stuff. Like, who thinks they get to be a part of it? But I got to be a part of that, which is cool. But I'm not the shortstop or the pitcher. Like I'm the PR person. And so then going back out with everybody on the staff. And I remember Kim Ang, who's now obviously the Marlins general manager, but she was our assistant GM and very close friend of mine. We were roommates for a long time in spring training. She and I were kind of the highest ranking people out at the bars with everybody in the staff. And I remember we were both kind of standing up on stools and like giving a speech to probably 50 to 75 front office people. And we just overtook the bar and people are spraying drinks around the bar. And it was like, man, this is so cool. And so I think about all the people that work there, and we work 70-hour weeks, and it's not a lot of pay when you're young in your career and you're doing all this. And to get to celebrate that, I'd say that moment as a singular moment, just being able to celebrate with staff is always one that's kind of stuck out in my head.
That's awesome. And, I'm sure we all had that moment. Like, I know I had that moment when the Sox won the World Series in 05. I know Kevin had that moment in 2016 as well. But one last question. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
For anyone looking to get into the game of baseball, whether it's marketing, public relations, whatever it may be, what would you recommend? And I know the first thing I would recommend, in all honesty, is applying for the Steele internship with the Hall of Fame to give you a good basis to understand the game and what it means to people. Because that's one thing I'm struck by is when you go to the Hall of Fame and you see other people there, you see what it means to people. It's not some just hobby. It's a passion. It's a life, that kind of thing. So what would you recommend, like a degree, what type of degree, experience, whatever it may be?
So a couple things. I mean, the Steele internship is absolutely as incredible as you're saying. And the thing that's unique about it is that it's not a full season. It's only for the summer. And every other internship in baseball, for the most part, is a full season. So, I mean, I went to Indiana, and had it been nowadays where I'm not home and not home in Los Angeles from April and October, I'm away at school. So our internship is an incredible learning internship that I highly recommend to anybody. But if you're just trying to essentially get in, there's a few things I would say. One, a sports management degree is certainly one way to go. A general business degree, understanding of analytics, whether it's if you want to get on the baseball side or the business side, understanding analytics is important. Learning another language, that was a piece of advice that I got from the Dodgers assistant GM back in 95. And I went and took Spanish very seriously and studied abroad and traveled. And I cannot say enough about how valuable it's been to speak Spanish in my career. Landing an internship and recognizing that working in sports it's a lot of hours. It's not a lot of pay early on, but if you love what you do, if you're passionate about it, just get to know people up and down the hallways and don't just stick to your own little area. That was another early on in my career. Somebody said, if you really want to be a GM, at the time I thought I wanted to, he said, get to know everything that goes on, understand why group sales matters, understand why marketing and sponsorship and player development and scouting. Don't just, if you may be a marketing intern, but don't only get to know the people in marketing. Go talk to people everywhere in the building and learn what they do. And I think that's the best advice I got, was just paying close attention to what everybody does, how it all works together. And then you just work your butt off. I mean, this industry does not require Ivy League education. It just doesn't. Is it helpful if you're trying to become whatever, the next Theo Epstein or Paul DePodesta? Sure. But realistically, it comes down to work ethic. It comes down to, I'm never the smartest person in any room that I'm in, but I'll put my work ethic up against almost anyone. And I think that's how you succeed in baseball, is you work hard, open your ears, listen, bust your tail, and then come back and say, hey, what else can I do? And that's worked for me. And I can't recommend it enough to anybody who wants to follow in my footsteps, or anybody working in baseball.
That sounds like a good, perfect blueprint for anybody looking to have a career in pretty much anything, too.
In life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Any last comments, parting thoughts, questions?
No, I would just say to any of the people watching or listening out there, thank you for continuing to support us. If you haven't been here, get out here, check this place out. It's really special, and just very grateful that you guys wanted to hear a little bit of our story, and appreciate the time today.
No, thank you for your time. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so pause. Mm-hmm. And then you want me to go ahead and do the intro back? I'll just do cool. All right, and we are back. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Again, Josh, we're so thankful that you took the time out to be with us, to join us on a Monday in the midst of the chaos. It was I thought it was pretty funny how he hadn't even checked his phone. He had been in meetings all morning. So he's like, please don't, are you going to be asking me about any of the moves that have happened over the last 2 hours? Because I've been in meetings and I haven't been able to see what's going on. But I think the last thing he'd heard was the Oakland A's trade. And then from that point,
he did. Yeah. When we talked to him, he did not know about the Tatis injury. He did not know about the Reds Mariners trade for Winker and Suarez. So he was fascinated by this stuff, and we
were breaking news to him.
We were breaking news to him. It felt awesome.
So we're going to go ahead and transition, though, but that was a great time. We appreciate that. Hall of Fame stuff, guys, if you get a chance to get out there, you definitely got to do it. Pete obviously is very involved and has been there many times. And for me, I'm actually looking forward to possibly getting over there this summer. So,
and if you have questions about it, feel free to shoot me a DM, and I can certainly try and help you with some things, because like I said, I've been there a few times. I can tell you where to go to eat. We did hit on that a little bit in the interview about some of my favorite restaurants there and everything else. The one thing to remember is Cooperstown, like where the Hall of Fame is, it's on Main Street, 25 Main Street, Cooperstown, New York. Main Street's about 4 blocks long. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It is like Mayberry, RFD, for God's sakes.
LA boy goes to a tiny little town in the East Coast.
Yes.
Pretty funny.
The SoCal boy in winter.
Right. So from that, let's go ahead and we can go ahead and also make sure if you guys make sure you check out the taintedglove.com, our website that we launched last week. Check out, we've got some stories on there. We've got a lot of written word. Yumper just wrote a really good piece about the Cubs and spending. From our sister podcast At the Show with Yumper and Swo. So that's a great thing to check out as well. Check it out at thetaintedglove.com. Also, make sure you smash the like button on this. Follow us. Even write a review too. I mean, tell us, that we look really delicious on camera. Whatever you want to tell us, really. But make sure you do all that stuff too, guys. We're really appreciative of you guys taking the time with us. But Pete, now we're going to kind of switch on over to the gridiron for a few minutes before we dip on and out. Obviously, this is a really good show. The Bears and free agency for the NFL kicked off today, so there's been a little bit of flurry. This is crazy with all the baseball stuff going on right now and the NFL going right now. It's almost impossible to keep up. But the Bears today made their first big move. First off, late last week, the Bears announced that they were traded Khalil Mack to the Chargers for a
The
second.
Los Angeles Chargers.
The Los Angeles Chargers. Supercharger. Anyway, they traded him. It was what, a second round pick this year, and then a
2/5, I want to say.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It
Mac's
was-
gone.
Yeah. Mac is gone.
Tariq Cohen was cut today.
Mhm.
Eddie
Tariq
Goldman was cut today.
Tariq Cohen's gone. Eddie Goldman's gone. There was someone else cut too. Who the heck was it? Again, but what it boils down to is the Bears are going to stink in 2022. There's no getting around that. But if you look at what the money they have freed up for 2023 and the draft capital they have built up for 2023, this has been an impressive job. In my opinion, it's been an impressive job by Ryan Poles to fix the train wreck that the hipster doofus previous GM left for him. And what I really appreciate, there's two things I really appreciate about this. One is Poles is not afraid to do the unpopular thing. The Mac trade was a very unpopular move with a large portion of the Bears fan base. I have no problem with it because the last 2 years, Mac has spent more time injured than he has playing. So I have no problem getting that money off of the books because, to me, as much as I like him, he's wasted on this Bears roster because this Bears roster was going nowhere. And it was going nowhere fast. And if the hipster doofus former GM was still around, he'd be trading more draft picks to try and fill the holes that he would still screw up and have another 6-10 team or something like that. So that's the first thing I really like. The second thing, from what I'm seeing and understanding, Poles gets it. He gets a simple football concept. Football is won and lost on the lines. And it looks like his approach is going to be fortifying the lines, especially the offensive line around your franchise quarterback, which, again, is something that the hipster doofus former GM did not do. And that was something, if you go back and listen to the show that we talked about the Bears season, before the season started, I told you I did not want Fields to play because they did not have an offensive line in place to protect him. Mm-hmm. And it bore out during the season that they did not have an offensive line in place to protect him. So they need to get an offensive coordinator who can work with Fields' abilities, not have a system that Fields needs to fit into, but actually work with Fields' abilities like rollouts. Go figure. Fields isn't really a drop back passer. Roll him out, bootlegs, things like that. And also people to block for him. So hopefully this is the path they are taking. But buckle up, Bears fans. 2022 might be a little bit rough. And there's also some other stuff floating around in the Bird app saying that Virginia McCaskey is not in good shape. And her health has been deteriorating the last few weeks. Well, she's 99 years old, for God's sakes. God bless her. But there's a big problem when Virginia McCaskey passes away. There's a big problem for the Bears. Because the Bears will be hit with estate taxes because she is the owner of that franchise. And I think the only revenue the McCaskey family has is the franchise. And they won't be able to pay the estate tax valuations when she passes away. So there might be a Bears sale forthcoming. Because it sounds like the younger generations of McCaskeys don't want to keep the team. They want to sell it. But Virginia's always ruled with an iron fist, and she would never sell her father's asset. But when she passes away, there's a very real possibility that the Bears go up on the market. And maybe that's why Jeff Bezos was spotted in Lake Forest late in the season this past season.
Jeff Bezos is just going to buy everything.
Yes. Well, he bought the Washington Post like it was nothing.
By the way, Aldo Soto from another podcast I'm on, The Penguins and Ivy, just reminded me that the Cubs and the Reds play at the Field of Dreams game this year.
Oh, God.
Not going to be good.
Oh, God, that's right. And the Reds are the home team.
Yeah.
The Reds are the home team.
Now I'm boycotting Iowa in general just because their current legislation about the trans athletes thing. But that's a separate discussion. So I probably will not be going there until they fix that. But that's pretty funny how that's going to be like a AAA. It's basically might as well just play it at Iowa, the Iowa Cubs. Anyway, with the Bears though too, and it's we do wish the queen of the Bears, Virginia McCaskey.
Call it right, the queen of the NFL. To be honest,
right? The first daughter of the NFL.
Yes.
Hopefully she'll be okay. You never know. That obviously makes things, that would really muddy the water if she were to be, no longer with us. But the Bears did make a big signing today, though, too. It's not all doom and gloom. Mm-hmm. While Ryan Poles didn't seem to like what he saw with the roster, he does seem to have a plan. And today the Bears signed Larry Ogunjobi. I don't know. Ogunjobi? I don't know. I'm totally butchering the name right now.
I don't. I'm glad you tried it because I know I would butcher it.
Ogunjobi, maybe. But it's a $40.5 million 3-year deal. So it's not small change. It's big money there. So he's an animal, though. He's a violent, hard. They talk about those guys with like a heavy, like a hard motor, a really good motor. He's got a motor. With the Bengals before, so he was a part of a Super Bowl team. So he's coming in with the caliber of someone that's been there, that's played high level football. So that's good for the Bears. And it's always he's a three. What is it? Three technique. Yeah. 3 technique linemen. So that's going to be someone that matches up because Eddie Goldman being released today, he basically is going to slide right into Eddie Goldman's spot. It sounds like in that spot. So the Bears also have been linked to. They also signed. I'm going to try not ruin this one too. He was a 2020, I think, 3rd round pick. He was the backup for Derrick Henry. I know him because he was my handcuff, sort of, but he was always hurt. But Darianson Evans from the Titans was on waivers, so the Bears picked him off waivers. So more running back depth, a guy that if he pans out is healthy, will be a very good backup for David Montgomery, who I know the Bears plan to feature now finally because Matt Nagy's finally gone and you play to your strengths instead of trying to prove that you're the smartest person in the room when you're really not. So that's a good thing too. They do have a $140 million in cap space. Now that's going to change now with the signing today of Ogunjobi, but that will again, they've got a lot of wiggle room. That 140 though is for 2023, not this year. Yes. Obviously, we still have some dead cap money from the Mac move, but the Chargers actually are taking all of his salary. So the Bears aren't paying anything more other than the dead cap hit, which is really cool for the Bears. It's a pretty good move. Again, Poles, you got to like the fact that he's going to do this right. He's got 2 second-round picks in the draft now at this point, right? No first-round picks. That was the only thing I was so disappointed. I thought when they traded Mac, they would surely get a first-round pick, and I was like, sweet.
I think it's because of the money. Because if they would have eaten some of the money, I think they could have probably gotten one. But since they didn't,
they had to take the 2.
They had to take, yeah.
It just sucks for me because the draft is in Vegas this year. So I was like, wait, the Bears traded Mac. And my first reaction was, I'm going to get an opportunity to see the Bears draft here live. And nope, still nope. Thanks, Ryan.
I forgot the draft is in Vegas. I'm wondering if I'm going to get an invite
to
isn't it going to be at Alliance Stadium?
Allegiant? Oh, no.
Allegiant Stadium.
They have a whole section. I think it's Caesars, though. Caesars, it's going to be like.
No. Isn't it at Bellagio? Because weren't they doing something where they'd walk across the water?
They were going to do an introduction where they had little boats that go out on the water at the Bellagio, but the actual draft and everything was supposed to be in. I don't know if you ever been, remember by the link, and that huge convention parking lot out there was where they were going to build. The whole festivities because they're expecting like 750,000 plus people here to come for the draft.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, that's how much was in Nashville, and now that everything's opened up, it'd be crazy to not come to Vegas for the draft. But that's coming up here too. So Poles is doing a pretty good job, man. And you can't you want to make sure you see the bigger picture. He has a honeymoon period. Mm-hmm. He has the right to come in and break everything, tear everything down because he looks at the roster. He must not have liked what he saw.
My understanding is he watched video of the entire season before he made any moves. He went back and watched every play before he made any moves. Made his decision and is pursuing it from there, which is that's the approach you have to take.
Absolutely.
You can't go in with any preconceived notions like this guy's a stud or this guy's a dog. You have to actually watch the tape and see what's going on.
Yep, exactly. Well, good. So we got that. That's a good old fun stuff. I did just get a really cool email, by the way. I just found out that I am a finalist for the 2022 Heart of Education Awards here for the Clark County School District. So,
congratulations!
I'm pumped about
and
that.
Also, by the way, congratulations to my partner on becoming an adult.
I finally went poo-poo in the toilet. Oh no, not that one. No, sorry.
No, say it like George Costanza did. I'm a man, Jerry. I'm a man.
I'm on the bowl. Yeah, I got engaged. I now have a fiancé.
That's
right.
right.
Remind me of that a lot, actually. Like, I love it. Again, it's one of the weirdest parts about being engaged is when you're out and you're like last night, for example, or the other night, we're out at dinner, and I just look over and she has her hand just set on the table, and I'm like, oh, that's that engagement ring. What up? And so now we're actually having, like when you're in a relationship, and before you do have these talks, of course, but you also you almost want to jinx yourself to have conversations about it either. So now that she's got the ring on the finger, now it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? And I'm all like, can I, I didn't propose to her, when Jaws pops out of the water at Universal Studios, like Brody would have liked. But
wait, you didn't do the ballpark scoreboard proposal?
Should have killed me. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. So that's a fun part about this. She doesn't listen to my podcast, so she does probably sometimes just to pretend like she tells me she listens, and she doesn't like sports. So if I did a Kardashians episode, she would totally be in. But Real Housewives episode, absolutely. But sports ball is not her thing. Although she does love Golden Knights hockey, and Golden Knights kind of fading right now, so that's not as fun. But cheaper tickets, so that's that. But other than that, this has been a great episode, dude. Having Josh on, I know that we keep forgetting that we also have that 45 minutes to also add into the episode, so we want to make sure that we don't go too long. But having Josh on has been fantastic. Obviously, we got the free agent frenzy still going on. White Sox fans, Cubs fans, hanging in there. Yeah. It ain't over yet.
Right.
Just hold back your expectations a little bit. Sox fans, I think, are allowed to have expectations a little bit, but the Cubs fans, holding ownership accountable and holding the team accountable with how you support them. For me, as much as I hate the Ricketts and as much as I am really disappointed with how the Cubs are operating, I'm never leaving the Cubs. Like, I'm not going to not be a Cub fan because I've outlasted ownership before. I'll stick around. Like we've talked about on here, maybe Daddy Warbucks calls his money in, his markers in real soon, and they can buy Chelsea FC and then sell the Cubs to like a Mark Cuban, and then we can move on with our lives. But
Mark Cuban's going to buy the Pirates because that team's going to be on the market, I think, sooner rather than later.
Marlins too, right?
I don't know about the Marlins, but I see the Pirates. Honestly, the KB stuff I find fascinating because I could see the Rockies being on the market too.
True. That's true too.
I find that very fascinating that the Rockies are all hot and heavy on KB. Not from the player perspective, but from the business perspective of it. Mm-hmm. To me, honestly, every team should be hot and heavy for a player like KB. Every team should be. Yeah, absolutely. But from a business perspective, to me, it doesn't make sense for the Rockies, especially after the Arenado fiasco. And granted, obviously, Blackman's coming off the books. Next year? I think. I think this is his last year, or if not, next year's his last year. So there's some money being freed up, but it just seems very odd that you have Arenado, and now Arenado's gone, and now you have KB. And I think one of the things, too, is there's a definite difference in personalities between Arenado and KB. Because I think getting KB in the clubhouse, in the community, would be an asset for any franchise.
Agreed.
And Arenado, there's questions there.
Yep. And that was one of the reasons why people keep assuming that it was just a weird putty. It could have been a much bigger picture issue with his attitude. We've seen his attitude kind of. Again, some people don't care about attitudes. I guess maybe someone like me as a coach, I'm hyper focused on attitude because attitude is really kind of what dictates your gameplay is and how you treat your teammates and how to be a good teammate. And I'm still not winning.
but yeah,
back to back with one of the best hitters in the game with Goldie, and he's still.
Yeah. But I'll say this about the attitude: there's two different types of attitude we're talking about with this statement. Mm-hmm. There's the on-field attitude. Someone who, is on the field is a killer, as an example. All they want to do is rip your head off and rip your heart out. But the attitude we're really focused on, how is the guy in the clubhouse? How is the guy interact with the front office, with the ball boy or, the summer intern that's there just helping out in marketing? That's the attitude we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Once a dick, always a dick.
Yep. And so it could be a lot of things there. So with that said, at least for me, my last kind of thoughts on this week is, again, we thank you guys for tuning in. Some of you might be some new listeners. Like I said, check out the taintedglove.com. Make sure you smash the like button, give us a follow. Make sure if you go on Twitter, tell Beefloaf that he's a jerk for snubbing me in the 108 tournament. No, that's okay. I'm over it, I guess, sort of. It's just when he comes to Vegas next time, when he walks in and he sees there's tarp all over his hotel room and you hear Don't Stop Believing playing in the background and it goes black. Just know it was me. With that said, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. And again, what a great interview we had with Josh. We really appreciate Josh coming on to break down the Hall of Fame place. A hallowed place for those of you that love the game. Those of us that love the game. Really cool to hear the inside scoop on that stuff. So for me, I'll turn it on over to you, Pete, and you can take us on out. And we'll see you guys again soon.
Yeah, and just an FYI, usually we've been going every other week with the off season, and obviously it extended a little longer because of the lockout. Because what were we going to talk about? The CBA again and again and again, but we won't be back in 2 weeks because I will actually be out in Vegas with the entire Tainted Glove network people. It'll be myself. K-Fids lives there, so he's always there. Yumper and Zvo will also be out there too. And I've heard that they're supposedly trying to put together a game of movie trivia for the Tainted Glove podcast to square off against the Yumper and Zvo podcast as well. Let me tell you right now, we'll kick their ass. But we will be back in 3 weeks. That is April 4th, because we will have our Major League Baseball preview show. And we may have a couple guests. We're working on lining those up. Don't have anything concrete yet, but that's the plan as of right now. So, with all that being said, yeah, dog, take it away, and aloha.